Thanks everyone so much for being here today. It's such a pleasure to be able to be part of this conversation. My name's Meri Fatin, and my background is as a journalist and interviewer and facilitator, but I have a particular interest in, well, firstly the arts, and secondly in climate and environment. And a few years ago I started convening an informal network called WA Climate Leaders, and I've been part of quite a few conversations like this about the interface of arts and culture and climate change, and it's one of my favourites. So I'm really happy to be here. This is the first in a series of conversations that has been convened by Regional Arts WA, where we're going to hear regional communities talking about how they're collaborating with the arts to highlight important stories about climate change and environmental protection. And thank you so much to Arts Margaret River for hosting us today. It's just so beautiful to be here. But to begin and to set the tone for the conversation, I'd like to invite Wudandi Pibbleman Unangjali Elder and Custodian Dr. Wayne Webb to welcome us to country.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, just like to say, Kaya, I'd like to welcome you all today to Wuditjap or Margaret River. We are gathered here on Wudandi Budja, the Keelip of the Wudandi saltwater people of the Dwarden Wongi Nala Ulangali. How much it is to be sitting here at Nala Barup Maya, our story house. During the season of Bunaroo, to watch the birth, transformation and celebration of Meri Tree Girl, I'd like to thank Michelle and her team and the Arts Margaret River for always respectfully following our Wudandi cultural protocols. Also to congratulate Sky and her team for putting together this interpretation of story promoting climate hope in the old age traditions and theatre inspired by local landscapes, mythology and ecology issues through storytelling in the arts. Okay, I won't keep you long, but as we are here to discuss the journey of Meri Tree, and all I can ask is that we show each other kindness and respect and leave here with Bula Kadijan, plenty of heart, spirit and Kadalonga memories. Yanka.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Wayne, and it is so beautiful to be here on Wudandi country from Wajak Budja. The way that climate change and environmental care merge with arts and culture obviously develops all the time, and it's limited really only by the imaginations of our great creative brains. But it's really important here that we have this public conversation in this way, because it's about the risks of not caring for country and the impacts of climate change and how we grapple with it. This conversation is not completely open in Western Australia, and so it's very, very important that our artists actually take it on for us. Creative storytelling is at the forefront of how we're wrapping our heads around the changes that we're seeing in our places and understanding how we might adapt and stay hopeful. So today we're going to spotlight Sky River's Meri Tree Girl project, which, as many of you know, is a creative collaboration inspired by research on tree-based folklore and scientific studies on Meri canker, which is a fungal disease impacting our southwest Meri trees. So we've got 5 wonderful locals on the panel, Dr. Wayne Webb, as I introduced earlier, also 3 key creatives from Meri Tree Girl project, writer, producer, director Sky River, founder of Folk of the Puppetry, environmental scientist, set designer and maker Katharina Meister, performer and assistant director Jacque Ashworth, and then for a broader environmental perspective, Drew McKenzie, who's the General Manager of Nature Conservation Margaret River Region. Please welcome them all. So I wanted to start by talking about the identity that Margaret River community has around environmental care, because my impression is that there's quite a strong care for environment and kind of awareness of the issues around environment. But I want to ask you, from all of your perspectives in working in this space, what you believe that situation is and that identity is. And Wayne, I thought I'd ask you first, because you've been working in this space around caring for country for your entire existence.
Yeah. It's just all the communities involved in the Margaret River, community, and everyone comes together to all the important stuff like restoring the flow of the rivers and stuff like that, and caring for the country, like sand matting or the coastal dune systems and stuff like that, which our rangers have been doing. And yeah, it's just this is one of the communities that I find really work together and stuff like that to make these things happen and look after country.
Thank you. Sky, can I go to you next on that? What's your impression of Margaret River Region's identity around this stuff?
We've been really blessed to have our Wardandi community supporting, understanding the need for care for country. So I've lived here for just over 20 years, and within that time, the community doesn't just evolve to have that natural understanding without incredible teachers and people actively advocating it and making it happen in our community. And yeah, thanks to Wayne and our Wardandi community, that's been weaving its way through all of our schools and our community groups and our understanding of connecting to country here. I think the more you care for a place, the more you care for anything, the more you want to see it safe, the more you understand your sense of belonging to it, and you want to do your part. So that's what we've been doing through the arts.
Yeah. Thank you. Jacque, you were saying earlier about how, it's much more prevalent here because you have this visibility about the health and well-being of nature every single day, that it sort of comes naturally to people here.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, you open the window, you walk out the door and you're in it. We are super blessed down here to be in a healthy ecosystem that we get to go and explore on a daily basis, or smell in some way, or hear. You can be driving somewhere and the cockies go over or an eagle goes over. We are connected all the time here, and I think that we're super blessed for that, and I think that makes it a little bit easier to recognise the challenges when we see the challenges, and it deeply impacts us because we can feel it because we are part of that connection.
Thank you. Kathy, I want to ask you next, because you're a new Australian. What's your impression of Margaret River Region's identity around environmental care?
Sharing the source of the others, there's a lot. Since I'm here, I have always met a lot of people who knew a lot about the environment, and when you're coming from a different country into a totally different environment, you don't know nothing. You don't know what the trees, the names of the trees, or when which plant would be flowering, or the seasons that are here so different to the European seasons. But I had a feeling that all the people I meet are very connected, and when we would walk through the bush, they could tell me about the names of the plants, and this is a weed and this is that problem. So yeah, from my perspective, I think that people are quite informed and also open to learn. Like, I've worked together with Sky at a couple of different schools, and they were all very open and interested to having like eco art projects at their schools. So.
Yeah. Beautiful, thank you. And Drew, obviously education is a huge part of what you do. Do you feel like there's a very strong identity around this in Margaret River Region?
Yeah, our organisation's really fortunate to work in a community that is so engaged and supportive, and it comes in a whole heap of levels. And the Wardandi folk in this area have been so generous with their knowledge and their sharing. And our organisation, a lot of our projects, all of our projects are really based around collaborating with various different community groups and organisations, and we're really lucky to enjoy the support of a broad range of the community. I think there is a challenge in terms of the rate at which our population is growing, and I think that's always a challenge to make sure that the new people are connected into that and can get that same level of connection that was spoken about earlier.
Because didn't you say to me that between two censuses the population here had grown by 20%?
Yeah.
So there's a whole lot of people who need that to catch up.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. So 1 in 5 of our community have moved within the last 4 or 5 years. So that's a real challenge, I think, for organisations like ours that are trying to build connection and understanding. And, we've got to really work on that.
I would love to ask about the Meri tree and the importance of the Meri tree before we even talk about the project itself. And Sky, maybe I'll go to you first, but I think all of you will have stories to tell about the Meri tree and its importance as a keystone species down here.
You're asking the artist first for the environmental science. So it is a keystone species, and along the way I heard this keystone species referred to as a mother tree, which has influenced my storyline. It's a keystone species, but it's also under threat. So up to 80% of the Meri trees in built-up southwest areas are being affected by the Meri canker disease. So the Meri canker disease travels, and I'm an artist so I'll talk with my hands, travels on the wind by spore. The spores are connecting to the bark and getting under the bark and into the trunks, softening them and killing them. This is huge. It's I don't know, there's an understanding of Earth talking to and through us, and if this is a species that's so predominant here and it's struggling and dying, I feel like spending lots of time on country, those stories start to become your own stories, and it's like, oh, what is that that's talking to me? And the next thing you know, you're writing a story about a keystone species or a mother tree, which is the Meri here. So yeah, I think spending a lot of time on country has brought that to light, and that's sort of become the roots of this story in a creative response to a species that's struggling, and a species that feeds a whole lot of other species like the Carnaby's black cockatoo. They feed on the Meri nuts. That's huge. We live in a biodiversity hotspot of all these beautifully interconnected ecosystems. The spores and the Meri canker have always been around, but the Meri tree was protected because they all grew together and their root systems all protected each other. We've come along and killed them all off and gone, oh, but we've saved one Meri tree. That one Meri tree is now open and susceptible to the Meri canker disease because it doesn't have its family to help feed nutrients to save it, which, you know, not that I would want to use nature as a symbol or metaphor, we are nature as well. Is that happening to us as a community and as a species as well? Are we all isolated and not able to feed each other?
Yeah, it's a bigger story. Wayne, what are the traditional stories around the Meri tree?
Oh, just like we went out to Skye and met up with the ladies a few weeks ago, and just showing us all the puppets and different things and the story to the trees and all the rest of it, and I was just standing there and listening, and to us it sounds exactly the stuff we believe in, you know, with the little people and all that in the forest and stuff, and now they're living with the environment and trying to look after the place and stuff like that. So yeah, so I found it very intriguing how you pick that up and work with that. And so yeah, so like I'm saying, there's a lot of our beliefs in it, but it's like with the Meri trees, and it's like any lot of trees. If you isolate it and you see them sitting out in the paddock on their own, well, they've got no hope, because like Sky was saying, it hasn't got all the other trees around it and stuff to feed off her and stuff, and well, we call it talking, because all the root systems are together and stuff like that. And we believe that the wind talks to each other, the trees, as it goes through them and stuff like that, and the stories go along. So yeah, so all that sort of stuff is in our beliefs. So like I say, when I sing your little puppets, it's like, whoa.
Which is quite fascinating too. I mean, obviously your cultural stories are 65,000 years old, and they're this rich old culture that is embedded and alive in country here. And there's an awareness of, total respect, and an awareness of not appropriating those stories. So my first consultation was, tell your stories. So it's like, okay, well, what are my stories? So I went and spent a lot of time walking on country and listening and allowing my imaginative response to be out there, and created this, eco-science fiction. It's in the future. It's got this this timeline. It's definitely my story. But then when Zach and Wayne came over, and I've got a big timeline all drawn out in little pictures, and it starts with the Crow women and has all these steps through it, that when Zach went through the story, he kept bringing in elements that were really crossovers that kind of gave me goosebumps, because it was like, wow, I didn't know that, but I've spent a lot of time really getting to know my relationship imaginatively with Wadandi Butcher, and those elements came out in the story. So that was a fascinating little moment of magic for me that, yeah, was really exciting.
Thank you both for sharing those stories. Katty, you've just finished a degree in environmental science, haven't you? Was that prompted by sort of connecting with this beautiful natural environment that you're in here and wanting to be able to contribute more?
Yes, totally. Like, I'm also a runner, and I'm running a lot through the bush or on the coast, and I had the feeling I needed to learn more about it. And coming from Europe, my approach was, I'm going to do a degree, and learn more about the environment that way, and studied environmental science. But what it brought to me is that I felt, through learning about it, I felt more and more connected to it, because I could see more things and read more things that, while moving through it, you see them. But because I felt foreign, this was not my language, English is not my first language, so I felt like a foreigner, and I wanted to be part of it. And my way of being part of it was learning about it all. And also Sky really helped me along on that journey, because I knew her from when I came here first, and she always had this beautiful connection to nature, and I always felt this, need to be in nature and connect with nature. And I'm also an artist, and I've always done nature-based and climate-based art. And the Meri tree was one of the first trees that you just recognize it. It's massive. It's it's just there. Its presence is really strong. Then the honky nuts, they're so huge, like you can't really not see them. And then she came to me one day and said, "Do you want to do something about the Meri canker with me? An art project." And I'm like, "Wow!" You're like, "Yes, surely." So I think the environment here, like also Jacque said, or at the beginning, it's all around us, and you can't really not hear it, and you can't really not be inspired by it. And or what you said, you get out of the car and you smell the trees, and it's just it's right there, right? And if you're not reacting to it, then I don't know what's wrong. Right? You have to, you have to. It's calling. Yeah.
Exactly. Thank you. And Drew, you're also an environmental scientist, but you're kind of working more with the science than at the arts at all at the moment. But what's the story that you tell people? Because part of what you said about having all of these new people living in Margaret River is that they need to understand that it's a fragile environment, not an environment that can take any rough treatment. So is there a story around the Meri tree that you're telling people as well?
I think there's a few, and I think one of the things that's really interesting is that Meris are considered to be quite common in our landscape. They should be the backbone of our forest, and often a lot of conservation projects focus on the rare and threatened species, as opposed to looking at the whole landscape and some of these elements that should be just underpinning and holding up our whole environment. I think it's really interesting too that like the Meri, obviously it's got all these habitat values for our wildlife, but even Margaret River is so renowned for the wine industry, and it's a really important species for our wine industry because of the flowering. Keeps the birds, when they flower heavily during vintage, it keeps the birds out of the grapes and out of the vines. So there's that sort of other connection with Margaret River as well, and sort of showing that interconnectedness.
And then Jacque, in your work, that connection to nature is also to do with mental health as well.
That's right. Yeah. So I have worked heavily in crisis intervention and mental health recovery, and then came back to, I was living over east for a little while and came back home to WA and really wanted to change the way my approach of working with young people and vulnerable people And it's all about connection, whether or not it's connected to your community, connection to your people, connection to the environment and the land, and it's all of those aspects are needed to have a healthy mental health kind of overarching and lifestyle. With the Meri tree, sorry, I was thinking about it because I've got like little nostalgic moments of being back in WA again and my childhood of playing the honky nut, and I was having this thing with these guys. I'm like, you know how to play the honky nut flute? And they're all like, no, I don't know what you're talking about. And I was talking to Uncle about it as well. You know, it's like, it's all part of my childhood, and I've got really vivid memories of being like, you know, a little tacker and going out bush, and I had an empty egg carton and collecting the Meri nuts and the Meri leaves, and also the sap and the blood, and keeping them in little separate things and taking them home. And I'm sure Uncle can talk to you about the healing properties. And then, you know, as I've grown up and aged and become an environmental activist and been really lucky enough to sit with, you know, mob on country and learn all about, you know, the different species and the medicine and things like that, I was really, again, like that goosebump moment of going, oh, I collected all that as a kid. You know, it's like that country talks to you in so many different ways if you're open to listening to it. And it's really interesting to see, you know, what we've learnt that was just organically coming through anyway.
Exactly.
And what we don't understand as Westerners, because yes, country might have been speaking to us, but
we didn't know.
We didn't have the right songs or stories or framework to have any idea what it was saying. So maybe just turned it into art instead.
I can't let the opportunity pass now to ask you, Wayne, about the healing properties of Meri tree.
Thank you for that. Yeah. No, the sap that comes out of the trees, in the early days, our people were showing the new arrivals to the country how to use it to stop menstrual pains in it for women and stuff like that. And you know, you only use it, you crush it up, and you only use enough on your finger. What's that called? Anyway, that's your dosage anyway. But so that. And the other thing too is if you're constipated and stuff, like flush your body out. And the other way is to mix the fine bark, you know, crush it up and mix it with it too, and it actually blocks you up. So all these different things, and the what's name needs it too, the kangaroos, because when they got worms and stuff, you'll see kangaroos actually go to that Meri tree to lick the sap and stuff too. So it cleans them out as well and stuff like that. So it's all there for nature. And it's like the cockies, you know, they'll eat the nuts certain ways and stuff like that, the different cockies, and then the 28s come along as well and knock them off. And yeah, we live where there's a lot of Maoris, and so we get the drum beats every morning. It's beautiful, wakes you up anyway. But when the nuts actually dry out on the ground, the 28s will come back and get the dry seeds out. You know, so people don't realise that all this stuff's going on with the Meri tree and it's sustaining life in it. And if you actually look under the bark and stuff, have a look underneath the bark, what's there. You know, all the different insects and everything. So everything within that forest, where you are, you know, from frogs, people think frogs just live in the water. No, they live in dry land too, and they live in the forest, so you hear them all the time. So every insect, every bird, animal, all rely on what's around the Meri trees and stuff like that, and within that forest. So it's the cycle of life that goes, you know, without one, there won't be the other, you know, so everything relies on what's in that forest with the Meri trees and everything else there.
Oh, that's remarkable. Let's talk about the Meri Tree Girl project specifically. And Sky, you talked before about how you spent a lot of time just really being on country and really listening and paying attention. I'd love to hear you talk a little bit more about, you know, that process for you and what you heard.
Yeah, well, I guess it's been an evolving process. I moved here from all over the East Coast just over 20 years ago. And when I got here, I couldn't hear country. I couldn't feel it. I was really removed from it. And I guess I just felt it was so raw and ancient, and it was a really strange experience. And it was like I'd come here with my 3-year-old son, who's now 24 and in the audience, and it was like country had called him and my family, and they all rooted here, and I just couldn't feel and hear it. So I started walking, and I walked, and after 7 years of looking and hearing and listening, it started finally to ooze its way into my understanding. Mate, this is like a raw, ancient, old land. We're living with granite outcrops here that are billions and billions of years old, and here we are, this fleeting minority of species, so humbled to be on this ancient place. And so then when my son was ready to leave home, I was like, oh, right, okay, I've done my time here. It's like, nah, I had spent so long forming this beautiful relationship with Wadandi Budja that there was no way I was leaving country. It had well and truly claimed me after all those years. And I learnt about a wider sense of ecological identity, and I did do an arts degree and an honours degree, and I managed to tweak it into being everything I'm passionate about. So the honours degree was in storytelling and puppetry and eco-psychology. So to discover what my ecological identity meant and looked like meant having a present and embodied practice. So I practiced using my ears to listen to the wind in the peppies and the Meri. I practiced smelling as I walked. My eyes were looking at all these incredible different colours and shapes. And interestingly, once I'd kind of, regulated this practice of embodied connection to country, where I'm like, what does it mean to be connected? Okay, let's experiment with that. There was space for my imagination then to come in, and these characters started crawling out of that granite outcrop. It's like, oh, what are those old bones? Oh, is that the ancient bird woman who lives over there? Is that her kill? Like, who's out here? And so, yeah, I became really immersed with my imaginative response to being on country, which came from really embodying a practiced somatic connection to the world that I'm part of. Yeah. And so much more than just a fleeting human world, that's for sure.
Yeah, I think it would be great if you could tell us the plot of Meri Tree Girl.
Oh yeah, I got
just
a bit.
Because there's so much that we can.
I'm really passionate about the connection that underpins the work.
No, it's perfect what you said. I just think it's interesting because then we can understand some of the elements that you've brought into it.
So it's a eco-science fiction. It follows. Well, it starts off with our little papa boy as a child who probably lives in a time like ours, and he plays the flute, and his friend is the wind. So he has this beautiful connection with the wind. As time changes, the air becomes too toxic, filled with spores for humans to breathe, and they have had to build a dome and create a man-made, human-made habitat that's an enclosed world that's all about humans, no interconnectivity, just human survival. Sounded all familiar? And then Meri Girl is in that world. She's a part tree, part human child. She can't exist separate to an ecosystem. She keeps hearing these voices from the natural world. Meri, Jara, and she doesn't know what they are because no one can explain it to her. And the systems in the dome are breaking down, and Papa needs to play his flute. But in playing his flute, he's going to activate that wildness in Meri, which he does, and Meri has to get out of the dome. So Papa takes her out of the dome, where she finally finds this connection to the outside world. She discovers she can breathe out there. She discovers a whole mycelium network and trees, and then she discovers she actually does have a mother, and that mother is the last fruiting Meri tree in the southwest. So that's that's our story in a nutshell. In a Meri
In
nut.
a Meri, in a honky nut, yeah. Oh, it's so beautiful. I mentioned in the introduction that you've used tree-based folklore in this. So tell us a little bit about how you've incorporated it.
So I guess there's lots of archetypal elements in story structures. So there's kind of that story structure has been considered in making this work. There are many elements within it that can be found in different stories worldwide, different characters such as like shapeshifters or children that are born from trees. So I guess as far as the folklore being in it, it comes through the mythic structure, the archetypal characters, and bringing some of the elements of the natural world into a character-based portrayal as well. We have the wind is a person in this work, and in many different cultural stories you'll find a personification of the land elements. I guess that's developing empathy and care through character and story in a way that the facts of science and logic can't do.
You've collaborated both with Jacque and Kathy in kind of taking it out into community as well as part of the development of the project. Jacque, maybe you can talk about how you've been involved in sort of bringing some of these concepts into community as well.
Yeah, so Sky and I have collaborated on a few projects working with young people through the Not-for-Profit Concrete Club. Was it 2021, 22? We got funding from the LGSC, and we did the hybrid Webb series where we worked with a bunch of young people from different backgrounds and invited them to create their own hybrid puppets in response to their feelings of connectivity, connection to country, connection to the environment, connection to themselves. We also had the amazing Dave Mann and Beck Scoey kind of working with some of the young people to work on a song, and they did some songwriting workshops, and the young folk wrote a song about their version of connection to this town, and it was beautiful. We didn't have to prompt too much. The young folk of Margaret River really understood the assignment.
Yeah.
They really understood the value and the importance of connection to each other. And we worked with, like I said, different young folk from different demographics and different subcultures, and having that moment of like-minded on a project to work together, and they got to really understand that they're deeply connected even though they might be separate in other forms. So it was beautiful, wasn't it?
And using the hybrid. So the hybrid is a method that I've adopted to explore that connection to country with young people and kids, and my work itself in something is part human, part something else, or part animal, part nature, so that we're just breaking the idea that we're only one thing. It's like asking the kids, if you're part of nature, which parts would you like to create a character? And because we have, like Kathy and I've worked at Augusta Primary School in Carrydale, and we've done the hybrid Webb with the young people. I've been at Independent School. We've been working with lots of kids. So there's multitudes of these hybrid characters lurking around Margaret River. But the beauty of having these beings that they've made is then getting out into the bush and them creating their own stories. What's your magic power? If something is needing help out here, what can you do? So we've had kids who really are thinking about how they're connected, researching what might need a bit of extra love or what might be impacting our local environment, and having this magical, mythical story that can help the rest of the functioning ecosystem.
And you reminded me also of you were talking to me about the value of the puppet for a kind of somebody else to communicate with in a way that kind of opens up conversations that can't happen human to human directly.
Yeah, a projective distancing technique, they call it. There's more and more research coming out about the benefits of puppetry as a communicative tool, and I've been working with puppets for 20 odd years, and so often I'll be sitting there with a little marionette or something, and a kid will come and have a fantastic conversation with little man, and not even realise I'm there, which is the magic of being able to introduce prickly topics or different schools of thought, or presenting something that, you know, it might be a bit uncomfortable or a bit threatening, but because we're doing it through puppetry or story or an imaginative lens, we have a broad scope and for problem solving and analysing it and exploring it.
And safe, non-judgmental conversations for young people, which is particularly important. Yeah.
And so, did you come to a realisation at some point that there was some value in bringing science into the work itself, bringing some kind of pure science into a work of, you know, fantasy and artistry?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, because it was a creative response, there is a mythic story that is all based on my understanding, based on Katty interviewed some of the leading cancer researchers in WA. So we had this underpinning of the science, and some of the previous works I've done, we have looked at plastics in the ocean and things that had solid science behind them, and I've developed a creative response. And the Meri Tree Girl had that through the storyline that I told you before. And it wasn't until Katty and I were doing Carrydale, when Katty did a science lesson, an actual science lesson with her PowerPoint, and we explored the Meri canker. We were getting ready to take our little nature art packs out to draw the Meri nuts and identify the healthy trees and whatnot. And the kids were just captivated, and it made me, as an artist and storyteller who's like quite biased as to how I like to absorb information, go, wow, there's a real space for that. So it really made me start to go, is this enough? Is it enough to just have the creative response that I understand? Let's actually bring the science, the factual science into this creative work. So our papa actually gives Meri Girl a dome schooling lesson, which is the Meri canker lesson, and we learn about the Meri tree, which I think, and that comes in right before Saul Cresswell's incredible eco rap about the Meri canker, which was in there originally as the creative response, but now it follows on from the solid lesson in the science lesson, is then followed by the rap and contextualised within the work.
Katty, what's your recollection of that realisation and sort of working the science into the piece?
Yeah, well, you know, I always thought maybe I'm not creative enough. I always wanted to have the science
Even
in
though
there.
you're an artist, yeah.
Yeah, but, you know, I'm like, because Sky is next level with the story. And I'm like, I've always tried to merge the two worlds. Like, that has been, I wanted to write a thesis about how art and science could, like, bring this benefit to us understanding the world. And so I've always wanted to have both sides merging together. And when I worked with Sky, you know, the creative path was very strong, and I thought, oh, maybe I just have to step back and let it evolve, and I would like make little comments, oh man, this is not quite right, we would have to word it a bit different, this is not quite how it goes, like that. But but then when we did the Carrydale project with the school, I was like insisting that we had a science lesson in there, and because I said, I just think that, you know, the kids, they don't even know what a Meri tree is, and they first have to actually identify a Meri tree and be able to differentiate it from the other trees, and then, you know, and then they, to show them, like, look, this is how a healthy tree looks like, and this is how a not healthy tree looks like. And Carrydale was perfect for that, because they have this little bush court with a lot of Meri trees, and a lot of them have the canker, and you could really, you know, then go with them there and identify it. And the kids were actually, you know, really, like, all of a sudden they could go out there and say, oh yeah, this tree is healthy, this tree is not. And then they would go back to their land, and some of them had Meri trees on where they lived, and they came back the next time and said, we have 2 Meri trees and I think they're healthy, and oh, we walked here and I saw the Meri, you know, like, so it was yeah, so I was really stoked when Sky then was like, oh, we have to, include that a bit more. And I'm like, yes. Yeah, like that, you know, so, yeah.
Well, can we have a top line on your thesis on the interface between art and science?
Well, I've never written it.
No,
I've promoted it, but so the approach was, you probably like it because you like climate change. So my approach was like, how could artists help in how we understand climate change, and how people, like the wider community, understands the topic, in adding the subjective part to it, the emotional part to it, because I think I always based it on this philosopher Baumgarten, who said we can only understand the world if we look at it from the objective and the subjective side. And if we are only using one side, we can't quite grasp it. And because I've been an artist, but I always had the feeling I'm missing a bit with only being an artist of that world. And then I became a scientist, and I just really thought if we could somehow find a way to promote, even, for example, there's the artistic research out there now, but I don't quite like what they're doing. Like, promote a way to address topics from both sides. We would understand concepts better, and we would be better, and we would be our ability to understand the world from a more holistic point of view would be increased, because we are too much on the objective side, and we need the subjective side in there. We need our emotions in there. Like, I, for example, interviewed a marine scientist once, and she said to me, I asked her the question, do you think it's beneficial for artists to work alongside scientists? And she was totally for that aspect, because she said, I'm having these cameras under the ocean, and I'm filming the fish, and I collect the data about what kind of fish are there, what might be threatening them, or what is their life, like whatever her focus point is at whatever research she's doing. But I can communicate all these data points then later in my reports. But what I can't communicate is what I actually see in front of the camera, and that is, I see older fish swimming by. They're kind of like the old people in our community. They're a bit interested, a bit not, because they know a lot already, and they're like, oh yeah, there's a camera, whatever. And then there are the little baby fish, and they're coming like, oh, what's this? And then they play with the camera, and they're totally excited. And she's like, that's where the emotions come in. If you could understand that this world, the other beings away from human beings, actually are just like us. And if we could understand that more, and if I would have a way of transporting that alongside my science, I could reach way more people. And so, so that was my mission, was, to get both worlds. And then, funnily enough, I wanted to always be the artist part, but now I found a better artist, a stronger artist, Guy, and so I took over the science part. So the roles have changed, but yeah.
Oh, that's such a beautiful description. Drew, I'd love to hear your response, because you're working on the more objective side all the time. What you've heard in this conversation, does it make you, are you inspired to think about how that could be used in the work that you're doing?
Yeah, definitely. I think we're coming from the other angle, where our group's traditionally been, almost all the employees have been environmental scientists, and that's, if people understand this or know this, that will generate an action, a change in behaviour. And I think more and more we're realising exactly what you said, that there's a limit to how much data can generate that empathy and that action, and really realising the need to have more angles and more depth to that story. And the science is really important, but we need people to really connect, and that art obviously plays a really important role in that. And so I suppose we're starting to delve into that. There was a project that we ran last year. We've been running for many years, Adopt a Spot, which Kathy's actually delivering for our organisation this year. And that works with young people, grade 4s in the region, actually connecting to a location locally, and they actually give back and contribute to the regeneration of that. And Tracy Muir, who was running it last year, she was able to build in an art element to complement the science, the on-ground action, and then build in the art to really broaden out that experience, and the feedback from that was really positive.
Amazing, thanks, Drew. Wayne, I've got to go back to you to ask about the combination of the information and the storytelling that's involved in the way that you educate people, that sort of heart and mind connection all the time, and how you feel it's best to land some of these important stories.
Well, like you're saying about putting cameras down the ocean, we've been doing it for the last 6 years, right around the Capes here and stuff like that, so counting fish, and it is the same thing about the big fish. You know, that's the grandparents. Leave them alone, because otherwise you won't get that sort of fish again. They get smaller and smaller as you do it, and you know, we got our rangers out there doing that sort of stuff like that, and yeah, so it's very interesting. We're using it as a two-way science. We teach them the old science, which is our science, and the new way of thinking with science. And they're going, oh, you're right. It's like, yeah, we know we're right, because we've been here for a long time and we've been watching these things. You know, we haven't been just running around looking at it. We actually make sure everything's sustainable and stuff like that. So, yeah, it's been a really good, what's the name, going along with UWA and stuff and doing all the research and Australian Marine Science, and so many people are involved in it. But yeah, we're working along, you know, the two-way science and stuff like that. And what you've been saying, you guys, is really close to, you know, everything that's happening. And I like the way Sky's was saying before. She actually went out into the forest and listened. And that's what we say to people when we take them to the forest and stuff. We say, are you listening? And they will go, yeah, yeah. And it's like, no, but are you hearing what's going on? And obviously you've been doing that. You know, are you seeing? You might be looking, but are you seeing what's there? And I really like that way you put it with all that stuff. And all the little creatures and everything like that. That's what we believe in. That's why late afternoon we all look behind us like this. No one's following us home tonight.
You draw the line in the sand.
Yeah, put the line, draw the line in the sand.
Yeah,
Don't
no,
cross
they're
that.
all on her lounge.
Yeah.
Sitting there staring at you from my
Yeah.
lounge room. Yeah.
I just ran a ring around your house when we're up there. Stay here, you fellas. No, but
They're
yeah,
here
so,
now in the green room. Yeah.
yeah. Shouldn't have told me that. But people got to realise that nature, we need nature. Nature doesn't need us. You know, get rid of us, it'll come back stronger than before. But you know, so we got to try and learn to help it, work with it, you know, live with it, and all the rest of it. Because you know, and you know, once you do that, if you keep doing the things the way you're doing, we're just going to be like every other place in the world, just non-existent. So we've got to not control, but look after the waterways, because of course water is a sustainable, you know, life with everything, from every bird, insect, to humans and stuff like that. So yeah, so we got to keep looking at what we're doing with nature cons and these guys, just looking after it, you know, and it'll stay a better place. Because where I'm coming from is, I used to live up in the bush in a little bag hut in the bush, you know, and there's 8 of us lived in that little bag hut and stuff like that. So we lived off the land and all that, and hunted and gathered in the swamps. We've seen all that stuff disappear over my lifetime, you know. But now I've been looking at it with all the wetlands and stuff in Busselton there. Had to be one, eh? Yeah, so, you know, the sea level is rising and stuff like that. And they're actually getting worried, because we've done some drilling not long ago too, because salt's getting into the water system. So we've done a lot of drilling along there with DEWA and stuff along the coast. And so, but we've been telling them, you know, that water's been laying there for about 5 years now in the wetlands. And the Vass River used to dry up right down to Caves Road. Now it sits right back up inland, you know. So, you know, you can't manage the environment, you know. You can do what you can to help and stuff like that with all the different reeds and all the stuff that's, you know, been introduced to the area, and take it back to how it was and stuff like that. And yeah, so, you know, all the changes that are happening. And like when I was talking about the little bag hut up there we used to live in, there was only a few thousand people from Busselton to Augusta, saying we all knew each other, you know, the farmers and everyone else, and so, yeah, and to see it grow and stuff like that, and that's why I like, you know, what you guys are doing, you know, for the environment and trying to help it along and stuff like that, because that's the only hope we've got, is if we keep on top of all this sort of stuff and, you know, protect what we've got.
Yeah, you've led exactly where I was hoping we would go with this, which is about hope, actually, and about how you communicate that in the story that you're telling, particularly thinking about it in the context of Married Tree Girl, and, you know, what it kind of inspires people to do, and what it takes, what people take away from it, but also then all of the activities in the community and how they kind of build hope and purpose, I guess, at the same time. Maybe I'll go to you, Kathy, first on this one, about your kind of sense of how to tell these stories while maintaining hope.
Well, I think those stories are hopeful in themselves. You know, like a story like The Meri Girl is a story of hope, because the end message is that it tells us we are all connected, and if we can feel the connection, we will change. You know, so I think that is a story of hope. But then I've also talked with Rick Ansley the other day, and he just said to me, because, you know, we were talking about that we should all be driving our cars less, but then, you know, we are all living on the Cape, and there's not real public transport, so everyone is driving their car everywhere, and, you know, about the guilt you feel doing those things. And he said, and I really like that, because that gave me me personally an aspect of hope. Is he's like, create life around where you're going, you know, by planting trees or however you're creating life, you know. And I think, yeah, I really like that. That's a form of hope. You can do what you can do in your little world to create some more life instead of taking life away.
And if you had more capacity to do work around this, can you see opportunities that we just can't make happen for, I don't know, reasons of budget or whatever else, that could be incredible projects if only we had the capacity to do them?
Give us money, we do stuff.
Like specifically, what's the first thing you would do?
Well, Sky and I had a really good idea about a children's book that was not only a book, it would have involved a lot of research with Wandandi people, with scientists about endangered animals from the region, and we wanted to turn it into not only a story but also an educational book which teachers could use, where there is a guide to how to learn about, you know, those aspects. And it was the whole story went that it was also a girl, but in the end she created a world that was a better place than what it is now. It was a very green world, and the way she did that was that she just started planting seeds. And so, you know, that would be another story, and then there would be an aspect, you know, like what are the plants that are good for, you know, what are all the native plants that are good in the garden and things like that. So that's one thing. Of then when I think about, you know, working for nature conservation and the Adopt a Spot program, we really would like to have an artist element in there again, because that was the part that, you know, drew a wider community in, because there was an exhibition, and you know, so you can talk to more people about it, and it has that aspect of, you know, it takes this emotional aspect to it. So there's so many, you know, like it's just lacking some money. And there would be like, you know, could go on.
Yeah, amazing. Drew, obviously there's so much purpose in, because there's a lot of planting that you guys do, isn't it? It's one of the main activities that you're involved with. But do you find that there are people who are genuinely kind of emotionally trapped by grief and concern about the environment who are coming and getting involved with what you're doing?
Yes, definitely. I think it's a double-edged sword how we have nature all around us in the Margaret River region, but we also see the damage, like last summer with the big dry that we had. You know, people saw that, they felt that, they could see that in their river and in their environment. And yeah, it's interesting. We don't actually do a lot of planting.
Oh, sorry.
The focus of our work largely is about trying to keep our native vegetation that we've got, and we're blessed to have quite a bit of relative to a lot of the southwest. Try to protect that and then improve the health and the condition of that and the habitat value of it. So a lot of our work's around that. We do planting in strategic areas, but a lot more is about trying to look after what we've got, because we know it's already got a lot of that diversity, and it's a much more efficient use of our time and our resources. But I think we do attract people to our events, and I think, you know, one of the best quotes I've heard is that from Bob Brown about don't get depressed, get active. And once, you know, and part of what our organisation tries to do is provide opportunities for people to learn, connect, and then get active, and see the connections that happen to the landscape, but also between people who come to those events. And I think that's really strong, both for action on ground, but also for us as, you know, individuals.
Yeah, exactly. Sky, obviously you know the kind of all the psychology and philosophy around behind, you know, caring for people around this particular topic and the kinds of worries that they have. How have you thought about that in terms of telling the story of Meri Tree Girl?
Through the story, it is that sort of safe lens. We're following a story, and yes, you can take away the pondering of it, but the vehicle itself is the way that I've offered that change and hope and connection to people. I mean, it is a response of grief, and it is a response of love. And I think lately I've just really been finding a lot of solace in the word "and," because it exists. It's not toxic hope, because we also know the earth is calling to us. All these different fields are starting to cross-pollinate. We've got the sciences and the arts, we've got the psychology and the arts, we've got amazing First Nations knowledge and all of the fields that is starting to impact. So yes, there's grief and there's love, and that's what's driving the action. So yeah, like Drew said, it's about connecting. And I mean, we've had such a beautiful creative collaboration on the Meri Tree Girl, that all of us working together to feel like we're actively caring for country. We're also caring for each other, and it comes straight back to that isolated Meri tree being open and susceptible, and all of us working together as a community and feeling like we're using our threads and weaving them all together to try and create hope and change and purpose and meaning.
Yeah, exactly. Jacque, I'd love to hear from the context of your activist background as well, about how, you know, you're working on this project at the moment, but in the background, how strongly do you feel that activism is still an important part of this story?
I think activism is 150% important, because activists come from a lens of being able to bear witness to the destruction, and get creative in ways to get the media involved. Not everyone agrees with those tactics, because sometimes you're stopping people from legitimate work, or there's police involved, or those sort of things. But if we don't see the images, if we don't know what's going on out there, then we can't respond to what's happening out there. I've really found that this whole process and working collaboratively with these beautiful people just such a healing form of what I have bared witness to. It's been
Which is, what did you say, 7 years in the forest?
7 years in the Tasmanian forest. We had a blockade that went for 7 years, which is the longest running blockade in Australia, maybe anywhere. And we got it put in World Heritage, which is amazing, because mostly forest activism is going, this coop is just, you know, ready to get destroyed. You go out there, you hold it up, you get a photo, and it's gone. So to be able to continually actively block the destruction for 7 years and then get it put in World Heritage is just like, it's mind-blowing. Thank you. But, you know, there is a lot of grief and there's a lot of trauma, because in that 7 years there was a lot of other forests that went, and obviously now we're seeing, especially in Tassie, bushfires going through places that have never, ever, ever had fires, even in oral history, before whitefellas came. So, you know, the impacts of climate change are very real, and we're seeing it everywhere. So it's been an absolute privilege to be involved in this creative collaboration with, you know, absolute dear friends that can hold you safe and hold that space, and to be able to create and work on a story that's not only educational to get the next generation involved, but also to have that hope, because that's what we need. We can't, Bob's very right, you cannot get stuck in your grief. We need to continually move forward. We need to be active, and we need to care for country.
Yeah.
And activism can be fun through the arts.
Exactly. And
booby
very
traps.
active. Yeah. Wayne, I want to ask you, I mean, you've worked in this space of educating us on the care of Budja and on stories of this place for your entire life. It must be an incredible feeling to just sit in a conversation like this and see how the seeds of,
see how many people actually care for country now, because you can't do it on your own, so you need more people. And even like talking about, you know, activism and stuff like that, we spent 20 years down Walpole Way and involved in a lot of the, you know, blocks down there, trying to stop the logging and all the rest of it, with Jess and all those guys. It's like seeing Jess go from a young girl to a mother with big kids and stuff like that. So that continual, you know, thing of being involved with that side of stuff in it. And just that, you know, when you're talking about the spirits and stuff in the trees and stuff like that, that's why we don't like them burning tinkle trees, you know, all that area and stuff, because the hollows, we believe they hold the spirits of our people and all the other little people that live in them too, you know. So we sort of stay away from that area, but we try not to, you know, let those things get burnt and stuff, so we're always fighting against that. But yeah, and over the years just seeing large tracts of forest getting knocked down and stuff, and it's really good to see that everyone else is caring for the country, you know, as well and stuff. So we've got hope. So
Sky, Meri Tree Girl finally premieres next Friday. How are you feeling?
Like I'm birthing a psychedelic tree baby. It's it has been a massive work in progress, and it's been just such a collaboration between so many of us that the beauty of it is that web of many threads that we're all in this together. So yeah, it's pretty exciting to finally be putting it out there. And our digital media specialist, Danny Jennings, who's over there on the camera, he's been integral to the whole work from the beginning, and has created beautiful works. And the two of us are like, no, this is an experimental practice, experimenting with art and science, experimenting with puppetry and digital media, and experimenting with animate landscape experiments. And it's like, okay, do we have to stop calling it an experiment now? Are we actually, is this beyond experimental? But everything's an experiment, right? So the weekend will be a big experiment.
Congratulations, it's so exciting that it's finally made it to the stage.
Thank you.
I want to invite questions from the audience. Has anyone got a burning question? I'm sure I've omitted so many of them. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, question for Wayne. Good day, Wayne.
oh, there you go.
I'm remembering about 30 plus years ago, you accompanied Len Collard from the WA Museum to help him to map significant cultural sites from Cape to Cape. And I'm just wondering what changes you've seen over that period of time, particularly that I'm interested in the Cape to Cape strip. And part B of the question is, I've had 2 fires come close to my place in the last 15 years. Are there many Indigenous people here who have the knowledge of how to shepherd fires and how to do proper burning as opposed to what current authorities are trying to do?
Yeah, well, that's what we do, the cultural burns, and show people how to do them and stuff like that. And we just burn small tracts of land and have people out just to see what we do and stuff like that. Because we do slow burns, you know, we call it walking fire. And we're actually up on the ridge here at Wallcliffe, up on the, can't remember that road up there, but we're up there, and the fire brigade was out there too, and the Wallcliffe Fire Brigade, and we done a slow burn through these people's property, and everyone was standing there watching the fire and thinking it was going to take off, And then they started going like this here. We said, what? And they said, all these insects. That's the reason why we do a slow and cool burn. It gives the insects a time to get away. Because when you do a rush burn and stuff like that, you're killing all the food for the birds and everything else that relies on each other to survive. So we teach all that sort of stuff. But with the capes, yeah, I've seen a lot of change. You know, like I was saying before about the wetlands in Bustler. See, what people don't realise, out to Witcher Range, that's where the sea was. And it's only receded back to where it is now after the last ice age and stuff. But you only have to dig down that far, out by the ridge out there of the Witcher Range and the shells, where the coastline was. And someone was talking to me this morning and said that she was out the back here, you know, over that way, and she dug down and she goes, you know, there's shells about that far down. Go figure. Yeah. But we've actually been doing marine science out here. The Margaret River, you know, with the old rock out in the water, it used to run that way, the river, and then straight out. We followed it out for 10 kilometres, and the bottom of the river's still there, and the sides and stuff like that, so it hasn't changed, but it's still there. We took it out to, I think it was 77 metres deep. Couldn't send any cameras down that far. But we, you know, that's all that recording and it we're doing. So, and then we come to the 18,000 year ridge out there with the ice age, first ice age, and it's like a big cut straight along, but we've got it all documented, you know, filmed and everything like that. So in the future we're going to be showing people that sort of stuff too. Then you come back to the 9,000 years ago and the next ice age and stuff like that, where the land was, you know. And now we're actually, we've got some stuff down here. I can't say exactly what we're doing, but we've taken it back to 25,000 years, and that's when the wetlands and Devil's Lair still had a stone, and the entrance is there. And it's all collapsed since then. So 25,000 years ago, these prints that we're researching, they were in wetlands. And we've actually tracked the wetlands out into the ocean. So it's actually coming up and taking all that stuff back, the oceans. People seem to think that it's going to happen just like that, you know. It's going to change, you know, with sea level rise and it. No, it'll come and get it slowly, take it back. And, you know, like I keep saying about keep trying to regenerate the land and stuff, because what happens here affects that out there. So we've got to look after it and see it like that. And I always think about, you know, my two great grandsons. What are we leaving them, you know? I know I won't be here, but hey, at least there might be hope for the next generations and after that. So, yeah, but
some insight into the ancientness of the place, doesn't it? Just those layers of and the ages that have been survived. Yeah, thank you, Wayne. Any other questions? Yes, go ahead.
I've got a question for Sky. Obviously, it's been a very long journey honing a craft and a journey of discovery throughout that. How do you think that your craft as a puppeteer and creating these puppets, has it shaped linearly as any craft would while you work at it and toil at it and change your creative expression, or has it really been shaped by that kind of connection to nature and learning that as you've gone through?
It's definitely changed in like the scale. For so many years they were small marionette characters, and then they've evolved in size. As far as the characters, they're just the ones that have come out of me and multiplied. Like there's, they just sort of, I keep making them. I think the hybridity is something that has evolved, like, and become more of a focal point, as in they were probably always mythical beings, sort of pixie fairy type characters, but as I've evolved and become more and more connected to country and consciously been weaving that through my storytelling, there's been more of an emphasis on how I can include that wider sense of ecological self through these beings that I'm using to tell those stories.
Oh yes, go ahead.
Mine follows on from that, really. I had the privilege of seeing you live with your puppets, and I wanted to ask you what it's like to see them take on a personality rather than just a character. It's an offstage, onstage thing that happens in puppetry that's unique to puppetry. But of course, when they leave the stage, they're stored somewhere and they still seem to have this kind of essence to them. So what has it been like to see your puppets?
To see them off the couch. Oh no, look, it's been fantastic as well to, different characters and the different puppeteers that have come in to bring those characters to life. So even, as the writer of the work, you create a character in a literary sense, and then I've developed these characters as an artefact, and then handing them over to a performer to then embody them and become that puppeteer. So it's been quite interesting having those characters take on their own lives depending on the performer and puppeteer that's got them. And I've got a beautiful regionally based cast that have done that. Our whole cast, the whole making of the work has been local, and that's been amazingly exciting. We were blessed to get some funding from Regional Arts WA to upskill in our puppeteering skills. So we got Michael Barlow down from Spare Parts Puppet Theatre, and he came and did an intensive with us using the puppets. So that was a really great way. I mean, the performers that are in the cast have a background in numerous arts and performance, but not puppetry. So it's been a massive learning curve for all of us, and it's been pretty fabulous seeing them come to life with the different personalities that I wouldn't have done if I were playing every part. Thanks.
It's so wonderful to hear you all speak about hybridity and being more than one thing, giving you more perspectives to come at creative problem solving. Do any of you have a perspective on when humankind funneled ourselves into this idea that you are only one thing and therefore you will only look at things in one particular framework? And do you think now we've reached a time where we're celebrating that you are many things and you will have many perspectives? I mean, the first scientists were artists. What if the Earth wasn't flat? And they explored an idea and they became scientists by proving a theory. Do you think we're in a different time?
Where we break down Western thought.
It's really interesting, isn't it? Because I think I speak for myself, but I'm sure you guys can feel that. Is like I've never fit into that one thought, one personality, one purpose, one. I think they call it ADHD now, but. I was always the kid that was dreaming and looking out the window and getting told off and being naughty and disruptive, and I made the best activist. But it's I don't know. It's in our DNA. I don't know how to be one.
I think even the climate crisis that we're in, the state of our planet and our planet calling, we are it. We are part of our wider ecology. We breathe the air. Our body's made of the substance that the rest of the world is made of. It was just a really toxic story that we've been told as Westerners that separated us from nature. And, that for me, that's the sacred wound that has driven my purpose through life to actually figure out what that meant, to go, hang on, it was a story that we were told that not all cultures were told, but our contemporary Western culture was. And look where it's led in such a short amount of time. We're destroying things based on a toxic story. So in response to that, can we tell some different stories that might enable us to, come back in touch with all those things that you mentioned and see ourselves as part of this broad ecosystem that we belong to?
I think we might need another hour-long discussion. But it is about breaking down those systems that we've created as well, right? Like, we don't fit in those systems that tell this narrative that we don't belong. And those systems, not only are we destroying the environment, but those systems are imploding and destroying themselves because they're systems that don't work. So we need to look towards nature to create new systems and new ways of community collaboration and conversations on how we can do things. And remember that we are an ecosystem, we are all connected, so we need to stop trying to fit into that narrative. Sorry, I cut you off.
No. I just wanted to say to that we are living in a world, I think, where we have more and more specialists, and everyone is good in their one little category, but what we have, it's not that you are only that, but you get kind of trained to become better and better in this one little thing, because there's so much to know and so much to catch up, because we have so much knowledge behind us. But what then doesn't really happen is the communication between all these specialists, and I think that's why now there are things being created like creative research, because people or transdisciplinary research, because people are trying to find a way on how can we communicate again and how actually can we understand each other as well, because all of these specialists have their own little language. And so then it's really hard to communicate with each other, because they will be using words that the other person might not understand, or it's the same word but both of them understand something different using that word. So we are in a time where we need to learn to really communicate with each other again.
Drew, did you have thoughts on that?
I just think maybe just coming back to what I think Sky touched on earlier, when scientists or artists and First Nations and all of the different elements of our community come together, there's so much power in that. And I think there is, we were talking about this earlier on, about there is common ground and common intention amongst such a large part of our community, but I know we don't often have the time or the resources to explore that as deeply as we should, but you can see that there's a lot of power in that when we bring all those elements together.
Exactly, yeah.
And I think it's the beauty of everybody looking after their own thread in that web. Like, we don't have to all know I don't have to know all the digital media or all the underpinning environmental science facts. If I can hold my thread and Katty holds hers and you hold your, if we can all actually be working towards doing what we do, we don't have to hold the whole world if we work together like that.
Lighten the load.
Well,
Well,
I was just thinking, we've got a lot of archival stuff out there, Look at Murrajugga. You get up there, all the stuff you need to know is written in the rocks there. Down here, we've got a spot down here too with the star systems and all that. And I can't tell you. Down at Muliana, there's everything's laid out, we got petroglyphs on the ground, probably area about big as this area we're sitting in here. And it shows you the stars and all the meanings and stuff like that. But you'll need me there to decipher it for you. But, all this stuff, you've got the Giwong stuff up in the Northern Territory and the Kimberleys, you've got all this different stuff. They're actually messages of the things that are there and stuff like that, and where you can go and get these things and listen to the stories that the old people will tell you and stuff like that. And all that stuff gets handed down. That's why Isaac talks too much at the moment, because, we took him away when he was a little fella, his mum down south, and just taught him about the culture and the stories and everything like that. And now I just got to get out of the room when he talks, because he just talks too much, doesn't he?
He's an incredible storyteller. He is,
It's like, But so everything's written in this land of what you should know and need to know, because it'll tell you how to survive and all the rest of it. So.
On that note of mysticism, I think I will wrap up this conversation. Please thank Dr. Wayne Webb and Drew McKenzie, and our Meri Tree Girl project team, Sky River, Jacque Ashworth and Meister. Congratulations.